Cromwell ordered that 12,000 Irish were to be sold to Barbados. And
hey, my country, my ancestors right here, my ancestors, yep. Black Irish reacts to truth about the Irish, first slaves brought to the Americas, forgotten history. Let's get right into the video.
There has been an ongoing debate as to whether the Irish were the first slaves in the Americas, predating the first black African slaves by almost a decade. Slavery is perhaps one of the oldest profit-making endeavors in human history, and the Irish were a special target for 1,000 years.
throughout history, the Irish were persecuted by one faction or another, to include enslavement and indentured servitude.
Yo, Irish, man, yo, they went through a lot. They went through a lot, honestly. I'm not gonna talk yet. I want to see what he says, but I do have a bit to say. All right, I do have a bit to say. Trust me, I do.
When did the Irish first become slaves? How long did the selling of the Irish continue? Who was responsible?
Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former soldier, Marine Corps Scout Sniper, history professor, historian, and book author. And we will answer these questions and other issues on this segment of Forgotten History.
Did he say that he's a historian? Did I hear that properly? I don't know. Sometimes my brain is quite slow.
Some groups deny the Irish slavery under English and later British rule, claiming that this was nothing more than voluntary indentured servitude, which did.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? Irish were technically themselves British as well. Not ethnically speaking, but like nationality wise, they were technically British themselves. Scottish people were also British, and they're still technically British, and they were also Scottish slaves as well. Me being from Barbados, we know our history, and we Barbadians, we are a mix of Irish, Scottish, African, and English. I also have a little bit of other like European stuff. If you listen to a lot of Bajans speak, we have a very Celtic tone, very Irish tone, very Scottish tone. You could kind of hear it inside of me. I've lived in America for a while, so my accent is a bit dwindled down. But if you listen to other Barbadians speak, you could definitely hear it. And there's a reason for that. But I'm gonna wait until he talks more to really get into that, because we're only 1 minute in, but I have a lot to say.
Did exist. However, there are counter-arguments that will be challenged here. There is a legitimate dispute as to the numbers enslaved, especially during the 17th century before the Act of Union in 1707. The official British legal terminology used was indentured servants. Whether the servants in question had willingly signed the indenture contract to immigrate to the Americas or were first to go. Many were forced. Therefore, those transported unwillingly and effectively sold were not considered to be indentured. This included political prisoners, vagrants, convicts, political activists, thieves, prostitutes, or people.
Yes. We're gonna let him finish, and then I'm gonna say a bit of stuff here.
Who had been defined as undesirable by the English government. The Irish entered.
Yes, okay, so there were black people in Scotland, and to be honest, there were black people in Europe during the 16th century and 17th century. I'm not sure how true this is, but I heard that most of the black people in Scotland, they were just deported, right? They were just deported to the Caribbean, to Barbados, my country now, and many other Caribbean islands like Montserrat. Montserrat is filled with many black Irish people. I think Montserrat is called the Emerald Gem of the Caribbean, but we're gonna see what he says. But undesirables, that is true. They just deported them right to the Caribbean, right to our homeland. So yeah, these people technically are my ancestors. of sorts.
Introduction to slavery was during the first Viking raids in the year 795, lasting through the mid-9th century. This period saw the Irish killed and enslaved. Just like many other societies, the Vikings attacked. Most of these early raids were along the northern and eastern coast using hit-and-run tactics. The Vikings would then flee with treasure and slaves and return to either their holdings in Scotland or back to Norway. Usually, many slaves who were of value were ransomed back to their families, but others remained in captivity. Then, from the year 837 onward, larger targets such as the greater monastic towns of Armagh, Glendalough, Kildare, Slane, Clonard, and Clonmacnoise, and Lismore were hit by larger forces. These large-scale raids generally spared the smaller local churches and villages far inland, but slaves were still taken, mostly to Scotland and Iceland. In 875, Irish slaves...
Yeah, man. Viking, bro? I need to learn more about Vikings, fam. Vikings? Brutal. Brutal, man. They were so damn brutal. And yeah, honestly, a lot of people need to talk more about them. Hands down. I don't care what nobody says. You can quote what I said.
Iceland launched Europe's largest slave rebellion since the end of the Roman Empire, when Hrólfr Hólmarsson's slaves killed him and fled to Vestmannaeyjar. In 841, the port that became known as Dublin was taken and occupied by both Olaf and Ivar the Boneless. And by 853, this part of Ireland was a Norse trading center, and slaves were a large part of it. The slave trade did not stop with Ivar's death in 873. Finally, in 902, driven out of Dublin by the combined forces of Brega and Leinster, but the Vikings came back in 914 and reclaimed all the territory, taking more slaves. But Irish resistance was not over. In 980, the Irish, under Mael Sechnal Mac Domhnall, king of Meath, fought and managed to defeat the Vikings and freed all of their slaves. Some Vikings who remained assimilated and adapted to Christianity and became part of Irish society. The final nail in the coffin regarding Vikings holding land and taking slaves was in 1014 at the Battle of Clontarf, when Brian Boru, High King of Ireland, attacked Dublin, aided by his allies, the Limerick Vikings. They fought other Irish allied to the local Vikings in Dublin, and Boru's force won, and all the slaves were again freed, thus ending the legacy of constant Norse raids, whether from Danes or Norwegians. The period forced enslavement and severity ended a century after the Norman invasion of England in October 1066. Subsequent Norman rulers of England eyed Ireland, and slavery in its true form was abolished in 1102. In 1155, Pope...
Yeah, true form, but there's always a catch to that, because in America, slavery is abolished, but there's a catch to that, right? If you're arrested, and you probably know this, if you're arrested and you get sent to jail in America, you are legally a slave. It literally says so under the 13th Amendment. So there's always a catch. There's always a catch. Because I see so many people saying, oh, Irish weren't slaves. Oh, but chattel slavery. Oh, but I'm going to get more into that. I want to see what he says first, though.
Adrian IV supposedly gave Henry II of England a papal bull, granting the king the authority to invade Ireland. However, many historians believe that this authorization was a forgery. Regardless, Henry II of England faced excommunication for the murder of Thomas à Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, so it is possible. However, Adrian's successor, Pope Alexander III, granted the lands of Ireland to Henry II, although it was not his land to give. The Norman conquest of England and Ireland were cataclysmic events that would shape Ireland's as well as world history and create tensions with England for the next 800 years. The Normans were initially invited to Ireland by Dermot MacMurrough, the deposed king of Leinster. He is sometimes referred to as Dermot of the Foreigners, and his grandmother was the granddaughter of Brian Boru. In October 1171, King Henry II landed in Ireland and allowed Dermot to recruit soldiers and mercenaries, as Ireland was made up of several kingdoms at war with each other. The city of Dublin and the surrounding area were under Norman occupation and would be called the Pale, or the safe zone. Going beyond that was considered foolish, hence the term we use today, going beyond the pale. But the Normans ended the practice of slavery in Ireland, but not serfdom, for at least a few hundred years. Despite the Norman abolishment of slavery, serfdom was still alive and well. Serfs were, unlike slaves, bound to the land, and the land meant everything. So selling people into slavery would have left no one to farm and conduct agriculture. Following the Battle of Kinsale in 1608,
So basically, what I got from that is they didn't sell them to slavery because it's just much more practical to make them serfs, and well, they're bound to the land, sure, I guess, but that's still kind of slavery in a way.
when the Irish and Spanish alliance was defeated, the Irish aristocracy fled to Europe, but the commoners remained, and they left a power vacuum filled by English nobles. Reports vary, and the numbers are in dispute, but the high number is that English forces had 30,000 captured Irish and Spanish soldiers. Other sources say half that number, around 15,000, were engaged, with 7,000 to 8,000 being captured. The Spanish allies were allowed to leave, but not the Irish. In 1603 or 1604, King James I of England, crowned on March 23, 1603, reportedly issued the order of banishment. This allowed those Irish captured to be sold, a permanent banishment. After nearly a decade, the king gave permission for the English Governor-General to collect and sell the captured Irish soldiers as slaves and send them to the New World in the Americas.
Okay, so this is the lore of my ancestors. We're getting into the lore of my ancestors now.
1612, the first recorded Irish slaves were sold, possibly to the Portuguese, and taken to the Amazon River Basin, in their colony in modern-day Brazil. This brought them to the New World. There has been some dispute as to whether these people were indentured servants or slaves, but it is clear that they were forced out of Ireland to the New World, so it seems illogical and ridiculous to assume that they went voluntarily, hence the status of slaves.
Yes, sure. Okay, people wanted to go, people willingly put themselves into indentured servitude, but I always tell people this because some people are like, oh, did you know that Australia was a colony built off prisoners or whatnot? Bro, before Australia was even discovered, that was just the British way of doing things. Just deport prisoners to whatever colony there was. Seriously, they did it to Barbados, they did it to America, they did it to anywhere. Even if you didn't want to go or not go, they would still put you in indentured servitude and they would just send you off just like that. It's just that Australia is just a popular version of that. So yeah. So these people who are saying, oh well, these people, it was no. If you're saying that it's voluntary, you're stupid. I don't know what else to call you. You're stupid.
It has been chronicled that in 1625, James I's son, Charles I, issued the decree, and it may be possible before his death in March 1625, but given the timeline on James's death, it would appear that his son, Charles, probably did issue the royal decree authorizing the Irish slaves. This included prisoners captured, those deemed to be common criminals, and rabble-rousers who were sold. They were to become the property of the English plantation owners in the North American colonies. As a result, tens of thousands of Irish men and women were sent to the Eastern American colonies, as well as Guyana, Antigua, and Montserrat. As well, between 1629 and...
He said Montserrat. Yep, Montserrat, the emerald gem of the Caribbean. Holy crap. Barbados, there were Irish people down there, yes, but Scottish people, man, there was more Scottish than Irish in Barbados.
1632, as other Caribbean locations over the next few decades were infiltrated, but the exact number may never be known. By 1637, approximately 69% of the population of Montserrat were Irish. Many were indentured servants, yet some were slaves. The rationale was simple. black slaves had to be purchased at a cost of around 20 to 50 pounds sterling, a huge sum of money in those days. However, Irish slaves were sold for 900 pounds of cotton per person, but also traded for tobacco and indigo in a straight barter system. It would appear that the Irish then became the largest source of slaves for English slave traders and plantation owners at that time, far surpassing the African slave trade until the early to mid 1700s.
Okay, yep. Okay, so I kind of learned this in my primary school back in Barbados, that yes, before the Africans came, they were white people. This is how my memory, because this was such a long time ago, but in my memory, my teachers just look at us and they were like, yeah, before the black African slaves came, yeah, they tried to use white people. But the white people, they were just not that good at cultivating the land, getting the sugar cane, because Barbados, it was sugar cane. I know different colonies had different like crops, that was their thing, but for us in Barbados it was sugar cane. But they were like, yeah, they couldn't handle the heat, so they used black slaves because, well, black slaves were just much more efficient and just much more better because they were more used to the heat and they could have worked better on the fields. So yeah, this sounds pretty accurate to what I learned in primary school.
Between 1641, during the Irish Rebellion, to 1652, it has been stated that over 550,000 Irish were killed by English forces and 300,000 more were sold as slaves, mostly military-aged men. Their children, especially women and girls, were sold and considered quite valuable in the domestic service roles. The greatest perpetrator of this was Oliver Cromwell, who defeated Charles I in 1649 during the English Civil War and had him executed. Cromwell, as Lord Protector, waged a ruthless war against the Irish, starting in 1649. By 1650, it is claimed that nearly 29,000 Irish were sold to planters in St. Kitts. During the decade of the 1650s,
wow, I didn't even know St. Kitts had that much. Wow. And you want to know what's crazy is the reason why I have my accent is because of them, because of these Irish people. When the black Africans came and they had to learn English, they learned English from the Irish and Scottish people who were already working on the fields, because they both worked together. They both had almost the same exact living conditions, right? So yeah, we adopted their accent. Yeah, we adopted their accent, and because it's kind of like small islands-ish, the accent didn't go anywhere, right? So even though today, in places like Barbados, Montserrat, even Jamaica, in a way, right? You could still hear that Irish, that Scottish, even Cornish. Yeah, even Cornish. Because some Cornish people were also sent to the Caribbean as well. True fact. In fact, the pirates, Pirates of the Caribbean, not the movie, but the actual Pirates of the Caribbean, they were Irish people, they were Scottish people who wanted better lives, and they went to piracy. That is a true fact. That's why they had those weird, unique accents to them, because those accents were Irish and Scottish accents too. I always go up to people and I tell people when they hear my accent, I'm like, yeah, this is what pirates sounded like, and they're like, what? How? I'm like, yeah, this is literally what pirates sounded like. Seriously. Yeah, so if you want to know what a pirate sounded like, go listen to an Irish person or a Scottish person, boom.
It is also claimed, as well as disputed, that around 100,000 Irish children, generally from 10 to 14 years of age, were taken from their parents and were also sold themselves also as slaves or indentured servants in the West Indies, Virginia, the Carolinas, and New England. It is also claimed that between 1651 and 1660, the Irish slaves far outnumbered the colonists in all areas. In 1652, Cromwell ordered that 12,000 Irish were to be sold to Barbados. And
Hey, my country, my ancestors right here. My ancestors, yep. I told you. My ancestors, fam. Yep.
those numbers are not in dispute, only their status. On 1 May 1654, his "To Hell or to Connacht" proclamation was issued during the Act of Settlement of 1662. This was when the English began confiscating all Irish-held lands, and the native Irish were relocated west of the Shannon River. Those who resisted were sent to the West Indies as slaves or executed. His own words proclaimed, quote, "Those who fail to transplant themselves into Connacht or County Clare within 6 months shall be attainted of high treason, or to be sent to America or other parts beyond the seas. Those banished who return ought to suffer the pains of death as felons by virtue of this act without benefit of clergy." End quote. The English could kill the Irish without penalty, but selling them offered great profit. It is claimed that over 80,000 more Irish were sold, with 52,000 going to the colonies of Barbados and Virginia.
Yo, I should not be very joyful about this, but yeah, you hear it for yourself. Barbados, my country, fam, my ancestors, fam, including don't get me wrong, the Africans were also my ancestors as well. I'm not excluding them, but the Irish and the Scottish people were also my ancestors. I am mixed. My lighting is quite bad, but you could probably look at me and realize that, you know, I'm quite mixed. So these are my ancestors. In fact, my last name, McAllister, I actually have an Irish last name. I think McAllister is an Irish name, right? Yeah, I think my last name, McAllister, is an Irish name. So yes, I can identify as Irish if I wanted to.
But again, we cannot verify the exact numbers. Many argue that these were indentured servants, not slaves. Yet there are no records of contracts between those forcibly removed and their benefactors. One may assume that, given the barter system of using tobacco and cotton as a trade item for workers, that these deported Irish were, in fact, slaves. In 1656, the Council of State ordered the roundup of 1,000 Irish girls and 1,000 Irish boys in their early teens, even some children, to be rounded up and sold to Jamaican planters. These numbers are in dispute, but do seem reasonable, as these would be children whose parents were already deported. Part of this order was an edict passed on October 2nd, 1665, which stated, quote, "Upon report of Committee for America concerning proposals for transporting persons from Long Island to Jamaica, to confer with the Committee for Jamaica," end quote. The persons were Irish, and no indentured servant would be released to go to Jamaica. These had to be forcibly exported Irish, who were already present in New York. In fact, some of the English receiving these Irish slaves seemed rather concerned, hence this following report, quote, "Commission appointing Cornelius Holland, Colonel Owen Rowe, Sir Thomas Roth, and 14 others accompany, by the name of the Governor and Company of the City of London, for the plantation of the Somers Islands, to take into consideration the present condition of those plantations, many well-affected persons there having been much oppressed and unjustly dealt with in relation to matters of conscience." End quote. Whitehall, 1653, June 28th. This situation, with the forcibly removed Irish not being a people to take subjugation lightly, appeared to have created the fear of an uprising, and this seems to be explained in the Whitehall document from November 18th, 1656. Quote, "The Council of State to Captain Wilkinson. Importance of the Somers Islands to the interest of the Commonwealth. Supposition that the Spaniards will..."
You know what's crazy is that some of those Irish and Scottish people, they have interbred. They interbred. Some of them, like direct descendants of them in Barbados, they're still around, dying out. Ironically enough, they're poor. They're very poor. They live in very bad conditions in Barbados. They're called redlegs. Where did they get that name redlegs from? Because the conditions that they were in, working in the fields as slaves and indentured servants, which is basically just slavery, were so bad. The conditions were so bad that the sun burnt their skin, right? And it usually gave like a red it made their very pale skin red, right? Hence the term red leg, because their legs would be like red from the hot Caribbean sun, right? And that name just stuck with them. And yeah, their descendants are still there. Well, technically you could say that I'm a descendant of them, even if I'm colored. It doesn't even matter if you're white, black, or whatever. Yeah, they did interbreed with some of the Africans, and hence us Barbadian people, and they even interbred with other people off other islands in the Caribbean as well, in the Anglophone Caribbean as well. So yeah, many people in the Caribbean have Irish and Scottish surnames because of that, and a lot of people don't even know that.
Will endeavor to get a footing there. Doubtful that a principle of disaffection may yet be retained by some of the inhabitants, he is encouraged to attend to his duties as commander of the fort, to keep a vigilant eye upon the malignant and discontented party, that they may have the less opportunity to prejudice the island's safety, and to use his best endeavors to secure the interest of the Commonwealth." End quote. This referred to the Irish population that must have been slaves, and they feared an uprising. No reason to worry about indentured servants. So, whether one accepts the reality of Irish slavery or not, the fact remains that there were Irish people forced into slavery. However, the exact numbers may never be known.
We hope you enjoyed this segment of Forgotten History. Please click like and subscribe for free. And please stay tuned and be engaged and informed. Send us comments if you have questions or even show ideas, and we will respond to all requests and comments as soon as we can. Thank you.
Yo, that was a good one. That was a good one. I like how he actually went into detail and addressed the fact that many people weren't just willfully brought to the Americas. Yeah, that's not true. I knew that myself. Yeah, it would be very naive to just say, "Oh yes, this people just willfully wanted to get up and leave." No. Many of them were forcefully brought to America against their own will. That's called slavery. And what is the definition of slave? A slave is someone who is owned by another person. You can say that is the proper definition of a slave. So even if they were indentured servants, that's still just another form of slave, because once again in America slavery is still legal. All you have to do is get arrested. It's literally said so in the 13th Amendment. So yeah, but you as a police officer can't go and shoot a prisoner, right? Again, those slaves just simply have more rights. So yeah, it varied widely though. Chattel slavery, I am aware about chattel slavery. Yes, chattel slavery was brutal. Chattel slavery was like the bottom of the barrel when it came to what type of rights certain slaves had and whatnot. Yes. But many people are just saying that, or should I say many people are using that to just completely dismiss the treatment that the Irish went through. And yeah, no, that's not okay. Okay, history is history, even if it doesn't fit your narrative. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure you check out these other videos that you see right here. And if you like the video, if you like what I have to say, make sure to like it. It helps me a lot. Let more people see this video. If you like my reactions and you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe, right? I like doing this stuff. I like learning about history. And thank you for watching, and goodbye.